Hello, folks. Good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are. Welcome. I see you're joining the meeting space. Thank you so much. We are going to get underway momentarily. Come on in. Hey, if you would do me a favor, use the chat and let me know that you can see and hear and see my screen, okay? You can just let me know, hey, I'm here. I can hear and see. Maybe tell me where you're from. That would be great. Great. No, Kelly, thank you. I'm glad that you can see me, but as a webinar format, I do not see you and you do not see one another. You are anonymous to one another, but you can reply to me and Leslie, who's our host from the National Society of High School Scholars. As your hosts, we can see. Great, welcome. Welcome, folks. I can see you're here from all over. Rolling in, great to see you. Elijah, hello. Desiree, yes, loud and clear, terrific. I'm so pleased. Okay, you guys. Nice to see all of you. Okay, so I see that, oh, great. Marianne, you're here in the question. Great. Okay. All right, folks. So I want to let you know a few things. We're going to get started here momentarily. We're going to give folks a chance. They're still coming into the meeting space. But I do want to let you know that this presentation is a solid hour long. There's a lot of content here for you. And the fact that you've made the time to be here to do this for yourself, I commend and applaud you. Give yourself the time and the focus to pay attention because there's a lot that's going to be presented over the next hour or so. On top of that, I will take your questions at the end, so stick around for that. We'll try to take as many of your questions as we can. On top of that, I recommend that you grab yourself a beverage of choice, whatever that is for you at this hour, and maybe a pad of paper and a pen. You might want to take some notes down. We are, as I mentioned, going to cover a lot of pertinent information for you, and that can sometimes be helpful. As well, one last thing I'll mention is that I'm not able to answer your questions while I'm presenting or we'll be here all night. So please jot them down. And if you haven't gotten the answer you need through the presentation, then you can post it at the end during the Q&A, okay? I can't promise I can get to all of your questions because we're expecting a lot of people and we'll do Q&A for 10, 15 minutes or so. Okay. Great, great. Leslie, if you will also put the link, if you haven't already, in the chat that folks can copy and paste into a browser after the presentation. I want you all to know that that's going to be there. Terrific. Thank you. All right, we still have people joining rapid fire, so give it just another moment and we're going to get underway here. Thank you all so much for being here. Okay. Great. All right, I think we should go ahead and get started. It's 3 minutes past the hour. All right. Well, again, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for your time and attention this evening. I hope this is going to be a presentation that you walk away feeling really empowered by and that you have a lot of really useful information. My name is Cindy Menegaz. I am the National Program Director at Smart Track College Funding. I'm also the mom of identical twin boys who graduated from college in May of 2020. But when they were between ninth and 10th grade, we attended a college funding workshop similar to what you're going to see tonight. And it was game changing for us. It really put us on a path to understanding what we could afford, what resources we could draw upon, what our kids' options were. And it reduced the level of stress and anxiety in our household around the issue of paying for college so dramatically. And I really hope that this presentation puts you on the same path to really getting a better sense of what your college funding plans are likely to be and um, how you can reduce the anxiety you may feel about this thorny subject. All right, so an overview of our conversation this evening is going to be, we're going to be talking about why it's critically important to plan ahead for how you are going to cover your eventual college costs. When you do that, it's going to help you maximize your financial aid eligibility, both in terms of need-based aid and merit-based aid, two terms that I will be defining, so bear with me. When you learn how to leverage what you bring to the table financially with what's available from the government and the colleges themselves, it is going to reduce the amount of money that you may have to borrow for your child's college education. So that's another really important thing to bear in mind. Now, I wish I could tell all of you, okay, just do A, B, and C, and you're good. It doesn't work that way. It is not one size fits all. There are as many different strategies for how best to cover your college costs as there are individuals, family financial profiles. So what's important for you is to understand what your best options are so that you can make educated decisions for the health and financial well-being of your own family. Now, by way of introduction, Smart Track College Funding, we are a company that's been around for 22 years. We have a team of professional licensed college funding experts all across the country, as well as a platform of online tools and resources. We've worked with some 400,000 families to help them better pay for college. And, you can hire a college funding planner anywhere across the country. They will typically charge in the several thousands of dollars for their services. But because of our size and our technology and the relationships that we have, like with the society, it allows us to really bring our rates way, way down, level the playing field, and make these important resources accessible and affordable. And that's something that we're very, very proud of. Now, what we do is work with parents to help educate and empower you with regard to how you're going to pay for college. I think for a lot of families, they just assume, they'll figure it out. Very often they find themselves underfunded and overextended and dependent on expensive loans. That's not where you want to be. It's a very passive approach. Just, I'm going to submit my financial aid form when the time comes and cross my fingers. You can have a lot more agency within this system. You can be proactive to really set yourself up for success within the financial aid system that you will eventually enter once your child is applying for college. The program with the Society, our partnership with the Society of High School Scholars, extends to all of you, parents of members of the Society, with a college funding stress test. There is no cost involved with this at all. There's no obligation whatsoever, but it's a really important opportunity for you to get on the phone with a college funding professional and talk about what's going on for you. You may have a college funding plan in place already. You may be saving money for college. That's great. Here's an opportunity for you to get a second opinion, see if there's room for improvement, if there's any red flags that might hinder your success. Or you might not have any idea at this point at all how you're going to cover your college costs. That's okay. You don't have to have all the answers now. But the point is that you want to begin thinking strategically about how you're going to cover your costs as early in this process as possible. So we provide that for you, that college funding evaluation. Some families are going to find that they want to work with a professional to develop a college funding plan. If you choose to work with us, if we can help you, you're extended a really steep discount on our retail rates. We're talking a few $100s as opposed to several thousand. So that's something that may be of interest to you down the road. I just want to let you know that that is available to you. I'm not here to sell you anything, but I also don't want to leave you hanging. I want you to know that there are resources available for you. One quick thing I want to mention about the stress test before I get further is that in order to take advantage of it, there are two things that you must do. You need to create your account with SmartTrack. It's entirely free. I'll show you how to do that. There's a link in the chat in order to do that. It's a parent account. But you'll log in and you'll need to provide us with some basic information. You'll answer a few questions in our assessment, and that will give our advisors the information that they need in order to provide you with that feedback, to give you that college funding evaluation that will be so helpful for you. But I just mentioned that because if you just create an account, it's not going to do you any good at all. We have to begin that dialogue in order for us to provide you with information that's going to be helpful for you. We'll talk a little more about that later. All right, so what we have learned over the years working with so many families is that everyone has the same primary concerns, regardless of their financial circumstances. Families all want to know, how do we pay for college? How do we use our income and our assets and what we bring to the table to cover the considerable costs of educating all our kids? How do we reduce those costs? How do we make sure we're getting the best financial aid package possible? How do we stretch our money, make it go further? And how do we balance these seemingly competitive goals of knowing that we want to give our kid every opportunity for a college education, but we also know that we're going to need to retire? And I think that some folks will damage one in pursuit of the other. If these are things that you are in fact concerned about, if you're out there shaking your head, yeah, I'm thinking about this stuff, you are in good hands, you're in the right place. This is what we're going to be talking about. Now, it may come as no surprise to anyone that your child's choices for where to attend college ultimately may very well be influenced by how expensive it is. What you may not know is that for many middle income and upper middle income families, they will overpay for college by an average of $22,000 per student per year. That really adds up. But the reasons are several. So, for one, a lot of middle and upper middle income families assume that the financial aid system is designed for lower income families and therefore doesn't apply to you, so you don't engage in the system at all. That's a problem because, in fact, the financial aid system is much larger and much more inclusive than I think most families realize. Another issue is that if you don't organize your financial life in advance of submitting financial aid applications when your child's a senior, you will not be assessed as favorably as you might otherwise. The best analogy I can give you is you wouldn't submit your tax return without taking every legitimate, fair, legal deduction that you had coming to you, would you? No, you'd pay a lot more in taxes than you have to. You wouldn't do that. The same is true here. You want to organize your financial life as favorably as you can before you submit information about yourself to the government and the schools. That takes some advanced planning. Now, some folks will look at the retail price of a university and tell their child, forget it, you're not applying there, it's way too expensive. But in fact, college generosity is a really key component here. If you don't apply to schools that are likely to be a good fit and be generous with your student and your family, you won't see as robust aid packages as you might be hoping for. So making sure that you include those good fit, generous schools on your child's college list is a really important factor. Now, when you submit financial aid applications, when the time comes, very often folks make mistakes here that cost them aid. You don't want to give the government or the schools any reason to deny you aid you might otherwise be eligible for. So you want to get this process right. And I don't necessarily mean computational errors. It's more like including information they're not asking for or missing deadlines. those can be reasons to reject you, right? And lastly, how you pay for college will absolutely impact how much you pay for college. How you use your resources to cover your college costs can impact your financial aid eligibility. It can impact your bottom line in so many different ways. So it's really important that you're using your resources in the most tax advantaged, cost efficient way that you can. That can sometimes save a family tens of thousands of dollars in and of itself. Now, I talk about middle income and upper middle income families in particular, and there's a reason for that. These are folks that are typically squeezed in these calculations. These are families that may not expect to see a lot of need-based financial aid considering your income or your assets, but at the same time, you are likely to find challenging paying full price for college wherever your child might want to attend. It's a squeezed population. And it's bigger than you might imagine. We're talking about folks with incomes ranging from $80,000 to $350,000 a year, with equity in one's home from a couple $100,000 to $3 million. If you have some retirement assets, some non-retirement assets, if you fall into one or more of these categories on my screen, you may very well be in that squeezed population likely to overpay for college. Now, on either side of this spectrum, you have lower income families for whom the financial aid system is designed to work. Now, especially if you're including good fit, generous schools and you're not making errors on your aid applications, you should qualify for the maximum amount of aid. That's going to be really helpful for you and for everyone, really. On the other side of the spectrum, you'll have very affluent families for whom paying full price for college will be expected and affordable. You'll be able to handle that. Look, the truth is that if you are earning W-2 income, not through your own business, but straight W-2 of $400,000, $500,000 a year or more, or if you have non-retirement assets of, $1 million, $2 million or more, you really are in a strong position to cover your college costs. There's not a lot that a company like ours or anyone else can really do for you because you will be expected to pay and you'll be able to. So it's really everyone else in the middle that typically falls through the cracks that we really want to help support, make college more affordable for you. All right, so definition number one, cost of attendance. This is how much a family will pay for college for one student for 1 year. It includes tuition, but everything else as well. So room and board, books, expenses, fees, transportation. Be careful when you're comparing college costs. Some schools might promote their tuition, but not the entirety of what it costs to attend their institution for a year. Tonight, we're talking about full COA. Now, how much is it? Well, it's expensive no matter where you go. Now, in every state of the country, they have a public university system, sometimes more than one. If you live in the state with this public institution, you will be looking at paying in-state fees of between about $20,000 and $40,000 cost of attendance per year. Now, there are great public institutions in states that you perhaps don't reside in. If you want to have your child attend one of those, you're looking at spending for an out-of-state resident between $40,000 and $70,000 a year. And then, of course, we have private institutions where it doesn't matter whether you live in or out of the state in which it's located. There is one retail price for everyone. Hopefully, you don't pay full retail, but we're talking low to mid 50s to as much or more than $80,000 a year cost of attendance. There are schools now that have exceeded that 80 grand mark. So 4 years can run you anywhere from about $80,000 to $100,000 on the low end to as much or more than $320,000 on the high end. And of course, that begs the question, how are we supposed to pay for that? Well, the first place we're always going to want to look is income and savings. Your income being all of the cash flow coming into your household, however derived, whether that's 1099 or W-2 or dividends, etc. Some families have college savings accounts. There are several different varieties. And by the way, they are not all assessed the same. I will touch on that again a little later. But maybe you're saving for college in one of those. And then, of course, you have your standard checking, savings, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, money market accounts, etc. So you'll look to those resources and determine how much you can comfortably divert toward college costs for every year that your child is in school. Now, if there is a gap between what you can readily take from your income and savings and the cost of attendance, what do you do then? Well, the first place most folks look is to borrowing money, right? If you've ever gone online looking at anything college related, you were probably shown ads for people who want to loan you money. And you might figure, well, I guess that's just how people pay for college, right? They just borrow the money. So I want to walk you through the federal lending programs. I think for a lot of folks, they don't really understand what is involved until their child's moving into the dorm and they realize, wow, we have a shortfall. So I'm going to walk you through it. So the federal government has two loan programs for undergraduate education. The first is directly to your student. Now, the government will loan your student money, and these tend to be the best loans for education out there because one, your student does not have to pass a credit check in order to be offered these loans, and two, they tend to have the best interest rates out there. Now, how much can your child borrow? Well, for a freshman in college, they can borrow all of up to $5,500. Sophomores can borrow up to $6,500 and juniors and seniors up to $7,500 a year. Now, the interest rates on these loans are set by the federal government and released the 1st of July every year for the subsequent school year. So we're about a week away from learning what the next school year rates are going to be. This last school year, the interest rate was 3.73%. That, by the way, is a fixed rate, the same for all comers. Now, these loans come in two forms. A subsidized student loan from the federal government means that your child does not begin accruing interest on the money they borrow until after they've graduated. Whereas an unsubsidized loan offer means, yeah, they begin accruing interest right away. But in either case, your child does not begin paying that money back until after they've received their degree. So that's great. All right, now, some folks, even if they don't need the money, like to have their child take some of these loans out. It can help your child build credit in their own name. It can also give them some accountability, some skin in the game, using some of their own funds that they're responsible for their undergraduate education. Now, if your child cannot borrow enough to fill your gap, what do you do then? Well, it's no surprise, I'm sure, that the federal government, the other loan program, is direct to parents. You might hear it referred to as a PLUS loan, parent loans for undergraduate students. Now, parents, you will have to pass a credit check in order to be offered these loans. Similar to the student loans, they have a fixed interest rate. It's going to run you, you should figure anywhere between $11 and $15 per month per $1,000 that you borrow. And they are 10-year loans. The interest rate up until the end of June this last year has been 6.28%. Again, a fixed rate for all borrowers. There is a nearly 4.25% loan origination fee on these loans, just so that doesn't blindside you. There may be some tax benefits to you depending on your status. Let me walk you through what this looks like. All right, so let's say your child's looking at a school with a cost of attendance of $70,000 a year, but right off the top, you've received a financial aid package worth $30,000. Fantastic. All right, you still need to cover $40,000 out of your own pocket. And let's say you can comfortably spend $20,000 a year. And if you borrow the balance, another $20,000, your child goes to her dream school. Okay, that's great. So for the purposes of this example, we'll say $12.50 per $1,000 borrowed, or a total of $250 a month. All right. Now, many families can find $250 in their monthly budget if it means, all right, my kid's going to college, we're good. Now, after the first year, did she get her degree? No, of course not. She has to go back, right? So let's say that nothing's changed, that the cost of attendance didn't rise, that you got the same financial aid package, that you can still cover $20,000 out of pocket, and you still need to borrow an additional $20,000 for sophomore year. So now you're up to $500 a month. You see where I'm going with this, right? All right. So by the time she's a senior, you're paying $1,000 a month. And remember, these are 10-year loans. So by the time you're 14 years out, you've finally paid off this series of 4 loans. Now, how many of us have more than one child to put through college? Right? Okay. So now you can see where it snowballs very quickly. And borrowing for college can be an important strategy for any family. It can be the bridge that gets you where you need to go. But my point here is that it becomes very expensive. It should not be your first choice for how to pay for college. It's a last resort, right? It's to fill your gap. You really want to learn how to leverage what you do have, what you bring to the table with what is available from the government and the schools themselves so that you limit how much you have to borrow. Now, what I've described to you here is the federal lending systems. There is, of course, the private sector. So those are the folks that show you all those ads, right? Now, the private sector has a little more flexibility in it. They may offer you different interest rates. They may have variable rate loans, for example, different term lengths. They may take into account your credit score and offer you a better interest rate. During the pandemic, the federal government lowered their student and parent loan rates considerably, and the private sector had a harder time competing with those low interest rates. We'll see what happens July 1st, how high those rates go for this next year. In any case, you will determine where you are and what your needs are when the time comes for you and what your best options are going to be. All right, so borrowing from the federal government or banks or credit unions, that's one way to borrow. What about from your retirement accounts? Is it a good idea to take from retirement to cover college costs? Well, there are some downsides, right? Fees, penalties, taxes that you might incur. And the banks will loan you money to send your kids to college, but they won't lend you money to retire on. So you don't want to wake up with a retirement problem. And then lastly, remember how I said that how you pay for college will impact how much you pay for college? This is a really good example of that. So let's say you withdraw some money from your retirement account to help you pay for your child's freshman year in college. Now, when you go back to resubmit your financial aid form, I'll talk about that later, but you do have to do that. They're going to assess that money you withdrew and count it against you as income, which will have the effect of reducing the amount of financial aid you're eligible for. So now you've limited what's available to you in your retirement, and you've reduced your financial aid package for the next year. So needless to say, if you can refrain from using your retirement assets, that's going to be a benefit to you. Now, equity. If you do have real estate, if you have equity in your home, or if you have other real estate, rental property, a vacation home, etc., you might want to look to equity to help cover some of your college costs. Now, I'm not here to say, oh, yes, use your equity, or oh, no, don't use your equity. Only that there are a lot of different ways to go about it, some of which will have negative impacts that you might not anticipate. You don't want to shoot yourself in the foot and limit your financial aid eligibility as a result. So do talk to a professional before you go tapping into your equity, whether that's us or someone else, just so that you make sure you don't end up doing more harm than good. All right, so private scholarships. Here's another way that you can offset the price of college. Now, private scholarships, in my estimation, get a bit more attention than perhaps is really warranted. I really want to manage your expectations, because the reality is private scholarships only make up 4% of the total financial aid in the whole system. They can be really competitive, and they may be smaller denomination, $1,000, $2,500. That's great. It adds up. My recommendation to you, if you're going to look for private scholarships, is to start close to home. Look to your employers or to organizations you belong to, like the National Society of High School Scholars. In fact, Smart Track has sponsored a private scholarship for members of the society, and you can look for that and apply for that scholarship. But my point being, stay close to home. Look at organizations you may belong to. Look if you have any particular ethnic, racial, religious affinity, look to those groups. It's a smaller applicant pool, and you may have better chances of winning awards offered by those groups for those groups. Now, one quick thing I will mention, it's called a stacking policy. This is where some schools, certainly not all, but there are some schools that if your child comes to the table with some private scholarship funds, they may look at that and say, hey, that's great, but that's money you don't need from us anymore. So we're going to reduce your financial aid package by that amount. What? Right, it's a bummer. So I just want to make you aware of it so that you're not blindsided by that if this is your situation. If your child has come up with some significant private scholarship monies, maybe find out from the financial aid office at the schools that have admitted them what their policy is, and just so you know, right? All right, let's move on. Now, choosing a less expensive college, here's another way to help offset your costs. Here, I'm talking specifically about community college. Now, whether community college is a good fit and a good choice for your family and your student, it depends on a few things. So, if you've got a really strong student, somebody who's really been accomplished in high school, has really strong grades, good scores, you know what? Community college may not be the best fit. In community college, everyone who wants to attend, it's a community college, you can go. It may not be the best fit for a really high achieving student. If your financial need is great and you have a really strong student, I recommend that you really look at those good fit, generous four-year institutions that might be a better academic fit for your child. They may turn out to be a lot more generous and might be more affordable than you had anticipated. You know what? A community college can be a good choice, though, in a lot of situations. Here's our recommendation, however. If your child's going to go the community college route, you have to have a plan going in from the very outset about where you want to transfer to. I cannot tell you how many students we meet that start in community college, transfer to a four-year, and their credits don't go with them and they have to start over again. The sobering statistic is that 15% of kids who start in community college will have their undergraduate degree after 6 years. So, every year your child's in school, you're paying the full cost of attendance. So once that time starts to stretch, it can be more expensive for you. So be aware of that, but you can do it. You just really have to have a plan and make sure that your kid's taking all the right courses and earning the right credits vis-a-vis where they want to transfer in their four-year. Okay, let's move on. So there are two types of financial aid in the system. There's gift aid, which we love. That's free money that you don't have to pay back. You might hear it referred to with lots of names: grants, scholarships, awards, housing offsets, etc. These can be provided to your child from a generous school who has money to give based on your family's financial need, and merit aid. So merit-based aid is a specific type of gift aid that is provided primarily based on your child's accomplishments. So if they're really strong academically, strong grades and scores, athletic scholarships are a type of merit award. Maybe your child's exhibited great leadership skills in organizations like the society, for example. Maybe they have a beautiful portfolio and they're looking at art programs. Whatever it is, the way merit aid works is these colleges are competitive, right? They have a freshman class to fill, and they have very complicated enrollment algorithms to help them get the best yield. They may use merit aid as a way to incentivize your child to say yes to their offer of admission. They want to make it more affordable for you so that you can send your child to their college. So merit awards can be really great that way. I say it's predominantly based on your child's merits and not your financial profile. That's Mostly true. There are some instances now you see where behind closed doors, some colleges may look at your financial profile. It may play a role in how they dole out their merit aid. They're not very transparent about that, but it really is predominantly about your child, and you do want to maximize that opportunity. All right, so self-help is the other type of financial aid in the system. The federal lending programs we talked about fall under this category, as does work study. So if your child gets work study in their financial aid package, it means that they can get a job on campus and the federal government pays the wages as part of their financial aid. Of course, if you don't get work study in your aid package, your child can still get a job on campus or in the community and earn some extra money. Now, there are $175 billion of financial aid in this system every year. They're coming from state and federal governments, from those private universities and their endowments, and those private organizations. So I had mentioned private scholarships only make up 4% of the total aid in the system. You'll see the orange slice of pie here on my graph. It's combined here with employer grants, so that's why you see this figure at 7%. The low-hanging fruit, though, the bucket I want to bring your attention to is this $58 billion. These are institutional grants. They make up a third of the total aid in the system. These are the monies that those generous schools, private colleges, and universities have to help make it more affordable for you to send your child there. And they'll provide those resources based on your financial need as well as your child's merits. Now, federal loans make up over a quarter of the total. I don't see that as great financial aid because, again, you have to pay that money back with interest. Then you have federal grants, things like veterans grants and the Pell Grant. The work study program we talked about falls in this category. There are state grants as well. Each of the states have monies to assist with college education, as well as some federal education tax benefits. Taken together, these resources are predominantly earmarked for lower income families to meet that need. Taken together, there is a lot of money in this system. And parents, it is incumbent upon you to organize your financial life as favorably as possible so that when you are assessed, you will qualify for as much of this aid as possible under your specific circumstances. Now, we hear a lot of things that, oh my gosh, we're never going to get financial aid because let's take a look at some of these myths, right? Well, we're not going to get financial aid because, hey, we make too much money, right? Our income's high. They're not going to give us anything. You know what? You'd be surprised. If this were the only thing they were interested in, there would be one question on financial aid forms. How much money do you make? Clearly, that's not the case. And when we talked about merit aid, your income could be astronomical and your child could still earn merit aid, right? So your income is not the only factor here. What about the notion that, my child's not a 4.0 student, we're not going to attract aid? You know what? There are great fit schools all over the country looking for kids at every level. If your child can get admitted to a choice school, there may very well be money to follow. Not every school is looking for that 4.0 kid. Now, the fact that you may own a home. There are schools all over the country, for example, that don't even assess the value of your home. And the fact that you have assets, they do expect that you have some assets. How much there is, how they're organized is actually an area over which you have some control. You have agency there, and how they are assessed. Now, the notion that financial aid is only for special groups just is not the case in the federal system. In the private system, private scholarships, we've talked about that, yeah, your affinity with any particular group may mean that there are organizations giving money away for folks who are in that group. So that may actually help you, and you'll want to research that. Now, the notion that your child could become independent. So sometimes we hear from families that say, well, I don't want them to assess my finances. I want them to look at my child as an adult within this system. There are few circumstances where your child could be assessed as an adult. For things like if both parents are in prison, if the family's homeless, if your child is married or has a child of their own, or if they're on active military duty, for example. Those are circumstances under which your child will be assessed as an adult. But as a strategy for you to pay less for college, not so much. And the notion that the college can help. Of course, the financial aid officer at the university can be a resource for you and can be helpful to you. However, by the time you are conversing with them, it's way too late for them to really be able to help you where it counts. Parents, you need to take the years before your child goes to college to organize your financial life favorably so that when you are being assessed, they see what you've got and are able to maximize their aid offer to you. That's not something they can do when you've already applied or when you're in the process of applying. You have to do that in advance. Okay, so I'm going to take a quick sip. I know I talk a lot. I hope this has been helpful so far. We're going to talk about some important terms that some of you may have heard of some of these, but I'm going to hopefully give you some more detailed information. Now, Fafsa, this is the free application for federal student aid. This is the financial aid application that the federal government uses to assess your ability to pay for college. It is, as the name implies, free. There's no cost to submit this application. You will encounter it as of October 1st of your child's senior year in high school. If your child's not there yet, not to worry, you haven't missed it yet. It doesn't open until the 1st of October. Now, you do have to resubmit this application each year your child attends school. It's really important that most families submit a Fafsa. And that's because there are some merit awards and some private scholarships that even if it might not be based on your family's financial need, they may want you in the system in order to qualify. So you don't want to leave that money on the table. And also, you're not eligible for those low interest rate student and parent loans from the federal government if you haven't entered the system through Fafsa. I actually had a father last fall reach out to me to say, hey, you know, we're about to send our kid to college and we didn't think we were going to need it, but we do. We want to borrow. What do you recommend? And he hadn't submitted the Fafsa, and his only option was the private sector, and it cost him significantly more than it would have had he been able to borrow through a parent loan. So that's important. The Fafsa is fairly straightforward. It's not terribly complicated, but it's really important that you get it right because there is a lot that rides on it. So we recommend parents that you are involved in completing this Fafsa when the time comes for your child. Now, the Css Profile is another financial aid application that you may encounter. It is used by private colleges and universities. Not all of them, but a lot of them subscribe to the profile. It's also used by a handful of public universities and some private scholarship organizations. But the way it works is this: every institution that subscribes to the profile, they have a laundry list of questions that they want to ask about you. They roll all of those questions into this one big super form, and it's administered by the College Board. Those are the folks that do the SAT and AP exams. So if your child's going to apply to a school that requires the Css Profile, you want to know about it. It's not free, by the way. It will run you $25 for the first school and $16 thereafter. It is going to take a much deeper dive into your financial life than the Fafsa does. But even though it's no fun whatsoever to complete a Css Profile, it's really the key that can unlock tens of thousands of dollars for your family. So it's really critical that you do it. Now, one thing I failed to mention with the Fafsa, let me go back to that, is your prior year. So when you submit your Fafsa, they're going to use as one of the basis for assessing you your tax return from what is called your prior year's taxes. So let's say, for example, that you have a student that is a rising junior. They're going to graduate high school in the year 2024. Guess which tax year is your base year for Fafsa? not last year, but the year before. That's 2022. So the financial decisions that you make in 2022 that are reflected on your tax return could help you if you organize yourself accordingly, or potentially bite you in the rear end 2 years from now when your child is applying for college. So it's really important that you pay attention to these things, because the decisions you're making while your kids are still in high school are going to have a big impact on how much you ultimately pay for college. So with the CSS profile, they actually look at 2 years of your taxes. So they'll look at last year, the prior year, as well as the year before that, your prior. Now, my recommendation here is, once your child knows where they are going to apply for college, you need to find out exactly what's expected of you. Some schools will ask for a Fafsa. Others may also ask you for a profile. And yet others may have their own financial aid application that they've created. Whatever it is, you want to know exactly what it is they expect of you and what their specific deadlines are. You don't want to miss those and miss out on aid that might be available. All right. The next term I'm going to define is called your expected family contribution. You can also hear it referred to as your SAI, or Student Aid Index. They are introducing that term, and we'll be transitioning to using it as we move forward. In any case, in case you stepped away from the webinar, maybe you're making dinner, I'm going to ask you to refocus here, because I'm going to talk about something that is critically important right now. So your EFC calculation is defined as the minimum amount that you will be expected to pay for college per student per year. Now, you may ask, how are they supposed to know how much we can afford for college? Well, by the time you've submitted these aid applications, the FAFSA or the profile or others, they have a pretty good idea. Now, the way it works is the federal methodology is using the FAFSA, where you supply this information, they run it all through a complicated series of algorithms and formulas, and it will spit out a number. That is your federal expected family contribution. Now, with the profile, the institutional methodology is used, and you may find you have multiple EFC calculations, and that's because the different schools may take the information, assess it, and spit out a number that differs from one another. Not to worry if you have more than one EFC, but you may, just so that you're not confused if you see that. But here's the thing. I have never met a middle income or upper middle income family who received their expected family contribution estimate and said, oh, well, that's about right. That's what we can afford to pay for college, so that's no problem. No, it's more like, are you kidding me? This is how much they think we can afford to pay. This is ridiculous. Why is it so high? And the reason is this. Just the way families have their financial life organized can artificially inflate these EFC calculations. So how you're taking your income, how your assets are structured, how much there are, what your equity looks like, what's your asset structure, your savings, your holdings, your equity, everything that makes up your financial life. How you have that structured can artificially elevate those numbers, and that's a problem. You need to find those red flags elevating your EFCs and take steps to mitigate those issues and bring your EFC down to its lowest natural, fair, legitimate, legal, ethical level, so that you qualify for as much financial aid in this system as possible. That's really, really important. Now, the next term to define is your need, or demonstrated need. This is defined as the amount of financial aid that your family is eligible for. Unfortunately, it doesn't necessarily mean that's the amount of financial aid your family will receive. Let me walk you through it. So let's say that you're looking at a school with a cost of attendance of $50,000, and you've been assessed with an EFC of $30,000. That's what they expect for you to take out of your own pocket from the beginning. Now, you're showing $20,000 in demonstrated need. Now, the lower your EFC, the higher your demonstrated need. And the greater your demonstrated need, when you combine that with your child applying to a good fit, generous school, That's really critical. In fact, that's how we define a generous school, is how do they meet your need? Do they meet it with a big package of loans? Or do they meet it with grants and scholarships and gift aid? You will find different schools will meet your need in dramatically different ways. You'll probably see a combination of gift aid and loan offers, but that becomes really, really important to your bottom line. So let me walk you through another example of this. What's more expensive, public school or private school? Private school, right? All right. So let's say that you're looking at a public school with a cost of attendance of $33,000 versus a private at 50. I'm sorry, a private at 70. And you've been assessed with an expected family contribution of $33,000. Now, are you going to get any financial aid from, oops, sorry, hang on one second. You have no financial need at the public school, but you've got $37,000 of need demonstrated at the private school. How are they going to fill it? Well, oh, where's it going? There we are. Sorry about that. The federal government will offer your student loans up to $5,500. What about gift aid? Well, unfortunately, at the public school, there's no gift aid because if you have no need, you get no aid, right? Now, at the private institution, however, maybe they fill your need with grants and scholarships to the tune of $25,000. Fantastic. All right, so by the time you pay off that student loan, you're looking at a bottom line of paying full price, $33,000 at the public university versus $45,000 at the private school. Private school, more expensive, right? All right, so now let's say that we're looking at this family's financial profile and we see, you know, there are some issues with how they've got their financial life set. Maybe if they make some changes, they move some things around. Now we put that same data into the calculator and they're assessed with an EFC of $20,000. Fantastic. What's the result? Well, now they're showing $13,000 worth of need at the public school versus $50,000 at the private. Unfortunately, the public university just doesn't have the deep pockets to help meet your need in a case like this. The private school, however, hey, maybe they come up with a package of $40,000 toward your need. By the time you pay that loan back, you're paying full price at the public university, $33,000, and at the private school, you're paying $25,000. Now, which one is more expensive? Surprising, right? All right, so I show this to you for several reasons. One, I want to demonstrate why it's important for you to bring those EFCs down if they are in fact inflated. Now, I have no agenda pushing private schools. They do tend to be more expensive than most public institutions. They also tend to have more money to give. Not all private schools are equally generous for sure, but they can be more generous than their public counterparts typically. The other concern is how long it takes to graduate. So every year your child's in school, you're paying the full cost of attendance, remember? Private schools just tend to do a better job of getting kids out in 4 years. Sometimes at public institutions, they can be crowded. It can be difficult to get classes in your major, or if your child changes majors, it might extend the amount of time they have to be on campus. So just be aware of that when you're looking and building your schools list, what the average time to graduation is at any particular university. All right, so when we work with a family, we're going to look at a lot of different factors in your financial life, and we're looking for two purposes. For one, is there EFC inflation likely here? Not every family is going to have an elevated EFC. Some folks are going to have a low EFC by nature, meaning they're going to qualify for significant need-based financial aid from the outset. Other families may have a really static financial life, not a lot of moving parts. There's just nothing's going to change that. The EFC is going to be what it is. Other families may have a wildly inflated EFC, and there may be a lot of different opportunities to bring those rates down and qualify for more aid. Now, in addition to looking at EFCs, something that's true for everyone is What is your best funding strategy? How are you going to best cover your share of college costs? Whatever that share is going to be, you got to pay for it in the most efficient way that you can, right? So you're going to look at income, how that's derived, how much there is, your assets, how much is there, how are they structured, tax planning. Your taxes are actually a really, really large piece of this puzzle. If you're carrying debt, if there's equity in your home or other real estate, if you own a business, that's another really big piece of this puzzle. If you're self employed or have your own business, weighing your different opportunity costs. You want to make sure that you don't choose one path that could be more expensive than another, right? Or that will hurt you down the line. Um, Cash flow. It's important to open up as much cash flow as you can while you're paying for college so that it is more affordable for you. Maybe there are grandparents or other third parties looking to contribute to your child's education. How is that going to play into all of these figures? Um, Borrowing. If borrowing is part of your plan, what are your best options there? And of course, always an overarching theme is wanting to protect retirement. Doesn't do you a lot of good to get your kids through college if then you can never retire. So you want to make sure and protect yourself that way too. Now, in addition to all of the factors that we've just mentioned on this screen, there are a total of 192 different data points that are assessed when they come up with your EFC calculation. So many of them are financial related, like the different things you see on my screen here. But some of them are also related to your family dynamic. Is there a divorce in the family? A non-custodial parent, a single parent, a guardian? Maybe you're anticipating or have seen an inheritance or some other windfall, maybe a settlement of some kind. How is that going to play into all of these figures? Maybe your situation fluctuates from year to year. Maybe you work in an industry where you have a strong year followed by a lean year, or vice versa. Whatever it is that's going on in your specific situation, you want to get a handle on it. You want to get an early look at it and make any adjustments that are going to help position you more favorably down the road. All right, so I'll give you some examples of what I mean. You know, we talk about college funding planning. What does that even mean? Well, let me give you some examples. So in this case, we worked with a family that had been saving money for college. That's great. We always recommend you save for college if you possibly can. In this case, the family's wealth manager, when their kids were little, had them open a college savings type account. They'd put $100,000 into it. That's great. But remember, I said they're not assessed the same way, all of them. This one happened to be assessed that it was elevating their EFCs by $20,000 per year. So by rearranging those funds, they were able to just bring that EFC down by $20,000 right off the top. Now, in this case, this family owns a business. They got their daughter through college without much trouble, but when their second child, their son, was ready to go, they found they had a big gap. So we looked at their tax strategies with regard to their business, and we found ways to open up enough cash flow that they didn't end up borrowing any money at all. They were very, very happy about that. And in this case, this woman is a social worker. She has a relatively low income by the nature of the work that she does, and would normally qualify for some significant need-based financial aid. Her husband passed away and she inherited about $600,000, which was her nest egg. That was everything she was going to have and really needed to protect that for her future. Had she just submitted her FAFSA that year, forget about it, right? She wouldn't have received any aid. So we were able to help her structure those resources, safeguard them for her retirement. In the process, demonstrate an additional $30,000 in need. She has two boys, 4 years of college each. Over 8 years, you can see where that becomes really substantial. As it turns out, both of her boys went to really great schools with very generous aid packages that she could afford. All right, so the next question we typically see is, all right, so when we talk about early, but what's really the right time here? Well, because of those prior year assessments, the ideal time for you to begin planning for how you're going to cover your college costs is when your child is still in 9th grade, 10th grade, that's really the prime opportunity. That gives you the most time and the most flexibility to have the strongest outcome. Now, if you have a rising 11th grader, it's not too late. That tax year has passed, but that's only half of the equation. The other half is how your assets are structured on the day you submit those applications. So that's really important for you. For those of you with kids that are have rising seniors, they're going to be a senior in the fall, you've really limited your time. You've only got the next few months to get your ducks in a row, if you will. There's not a whole lot of time for your college funding planning, but if it's something that's important to you, I recommend you get on it immediately. You don't have any time to lose because this takes some time to implement and to put in motion. So time is your friend. All right, so we have this partnership with the Society to provide these resources for you. You'll find it in the chat. Leslie, if you're still with us, if you could put that link in the chat one more time, you can copy it down and go directly to this page, or you can find it on the Society website under educational organizations under Smart Track. All right, so it's going to take you to this landing page. You will follow the link here to create your free account. Please note that these are accounts for parents, not for students. So students, if you're on with us, this is something that your parent needs to do. Please note that we do not sell, barter, trade, share your information with third parties, period. And we will not inundate you with email either. You can feel confident using this platform. We use military grade security. And we also don't seek any sensitive information. We're not asking for your social security numbers or your account numbers, nothing like that. All right, so once you log into your SmartTrack account, the first thing you're going to encounter is our assessment. Now, stop the presses. This is the most important thing you can do. When you create an account with us, it does you no good whatsoever unless you follow through. You need to answer some basic questions about your household so that we can provide you with feedback, with that stress test, give you some information that you can use. So it's really straightforward. You don't need to pull out your tax return and your bank statement, your mortgage statement. It's just general questions. It's super user friendly. Just answer some basic questions so that you can then schedule a college funding evaluation with us. You can choose a good day and time for your call. The calls typically run around 15-20 minutes. If you have a spouse or a partner, it's recommended that you take these calls together. Then you'll have the opportunity for that college funding stress test. We're going to put your college funding plans, such as they are, whether they're well conceived or you're flying by the seat of your pants, you don't have anything yet, that's okay. But we're going to put it through its paces, see if there's room for improvement, if you've got some red flags that are going to harm you. If you're in great shape, we'll tell you that too. Stay the course, keep doing what you're doing. This is really important. So I highly recommend that you take advantage of this. This is entirely free. There is no obligation whatsoever. It's just a benefit that the Society is providing for its members. All right, so is this even something that's going to help you? Is this relevant to you? You know, if you have some non-retirement assets, if you have equity in your home or other real estate, if you own a business or you're self-employed, if you are receiving or anticipate an inheritance or some other kind of windfall settlement of some kind, or if you have been saving for college in a UTMA, a UGMA, or other type of custodial accounts, you may very well be poised to overpay for college. And these are the kinds of things that will really hurt you. So if any of these things apply to you, take advantage of this because this is really going to be important for you. And the truth is, you know what, if you are in that population that's earning W-2 income of $400,000 or $500,000 a year, or you have non-retirement assets of $1 million or $2 million or more, you may not need this. You know, I just want to be upfront and transparent with you. There's not a lot that we're going to be able to do for you because you're already in really good shape. All right, so I mentioned that we do have resources available for society families at a steep discount. If it is pertinent to you, if we can considerably, significantly help you, our advisors may say, hey, we have these resources that could be a benefit to you. Smart Track Advisor is where you work one-on-one with your advisor to develop and implement a comprehensive plan to pay for college for all of your students. It's not enough to get your first kid through. You got to make sure that you don't run out before your second or third or fourth child is through college. You'll have as many meetings as you would need to develop your plan based on the complexity of your particular financial profile. So for some families, they can get it done in a couple, 2 or 3 meetings of, an hour, hour and a half long each. Some folks may take 4 or 5 meetings, just depends on what's going on and what decisions they have to make over time. Now, this is ideal for those families with 9th graders, 10th graders, 11th graders. Again, by the time you have a rising senior, it becomes dodgy whether you have enough time for this to really help you. Now, the other piece of what we call our bundle are premium resources. There are some free resources on our site. I neglected to show them to you. I apologize. I didn't take you through them because time is short and they are self-evident. Please take your time and review them. Go down the rabbit hole. There's some really cool resources on the platform for your free use and benefit. There are also some advanced services that are self-directed tools for you. Smart Navigator is a resource that helps you identify those schools that may be generous with your family based on historical generosity. So we'll rank up to 35 of the schools you're researching based on a green, yellow, red scale. The idea being that you want to balance your list not only for admission, but also for affordability, if that's important to you. Now, Smart Scholarships is a resource not for private scholarships. There are several resources out there online where you can do private scholarship searches. This is about maximizing merit aid. So this is a merit aid database. Once your child determines where they're going to apply for college, you look at those schools and look at all the different merit awards available from that institution. Some may require certain eligibility requirements or a separate application to be eligible for it. People miss out on those opportunities and they leave so much money on the table. So we've developed this resource so you have it at your fingertips. Make sure you're applying for every merit award available to your child. And lastly, Smart Steps is a series of short video clips and tutorials designed to help you through the entirety of the process, all the way through senior year, from submitting your aid applications all the way to submitting your intent to register and your housing deposits, et cetera. We can't do your financial aid forms for you. Unfortunately, that is something you have to do. But we want to make sure you feel supported and confident that you can do it and that you can do it correctly, and maximize your aid eligibility that way. So this bundle at retail, if you came directly from the public to us, it would run $991. But when you use the link specific to the society that we put in the chat there, you have a 30% discount offered on this package for a total of $697. And by the way, advisor and premium are also available a la carte. Obviously, there's a price break when you put them in the bundle, but if it's not appropriate for you, if you can't benefit from one or the other, they're available separately. Just to make a note of that. So your next steps are to follow the society link to SmartTrack specifically so that you have access to the free resources and college funding stress test and the discounts on advanced services, if that's in fact something that makes sense for you to pursue. You're going to create your account, but that's not where you're going to stop, because if you do, it doesn't do you any good. You're going to take that assessment and schedule your evaluation call. That's how we can help you. Now, I cannot tell you how many times I talk to families who tell me, Cindy, I heard your presentation and I had every intention of following through and doing it. And then I got busy or I stuck my head in the sand and I didn't do it. And I'm kicking myself because now it's going to cost me more. I lost precious time. Don't do that to yourself. take the opportunity now, take another 10 minutes when we're done here, create your account or log in. If you already have your account, you can log into your account, take that assessment, schedule your appointment. Okay, so here is where, Leslie, would you please launch the poll? So don't go away, folks. We're going to launch a quick poll here so that we can get some feedback. This is really helpful for us and for the society. So kindly answer these questions for you that you'll see in front of you. And then at this point, I'm going to take a sip of water and I can answer your questions. The other thing I'm going to put into the chat, in case you already have created your SmartTrack parent account, but maybe haven't logged in a long time, or you didn't take the assessment or schedule your stress test, I'm going to put this in here too. And this is where you can always go just to log into your existing account. Okay, so that's where you can log into an existing account, app.smarttrackcollegefunding.com. Again, app.smarttrackcollegefunding.com if you already have an account. If you haven't created an account yet, use the join.smarttrackcollegefunding.com/NSHSS, etc. Okay. All right, so let me go back through here. I'm going to look at the questions and we'll get started. Okay. All right, so bear with me 1 second. I'm going to read some of these over. Tanya says, I have twins as well. Well, hello, another parent of multiples. She says, my income's less than $60,000 and they're about to be seniors. My question is, when should we start to hunt aid and scholarships as well as where? Right, so Tanya, your children can begin looking for private scholarships at any time. There are a lot of platforms out there that can help find or that they can research private scholarships for. Start with the Society of High School Scholars. They have a lot of scholarships that are open and have different dates for when they open. So always have your student check back for that. As well as there's some platforms that I'm familiar with and like very much. I think College Confidential does a really good job. Going Mary, I believe, is another good site. FastWeb, of course, is a common one. There are others, Unigo, there are others. Some of them, you know, probably are better than others, but they're all going to ask you for your information. They may share that information, but hey, if they're going to give you good information, then maybe that's worth it to you. But you can plug in a lot of different factors and look for different scholarships. As far as the monies that can come from the universities themselves, you won't find out about that until after your child has applied, or when they apply, you want to make sure if there are specific merit awards, for example, that they could be eligible for, that they're applying for those at the same time they're applying for admission. Okay, I hope that answers your question there, Tanya, and best of luck to you and your students. Right, so Elizabeth asks, how would we know what aid packages come with each college? Once we apply to multiple colleges, would we then receive notices from different colleges letting us know what's covered and what aid has been applied in order for us to compare? Yes, so basically what you mean is, when do you get your aid package? How do you know what they're going to give? Now, there are some sites that you can use to estimate what any particular college will provide for you in aid. Certainly, the SmartTrack platform can do that for you. When you plug in the information in the schools you're looking at, we can give you some estimates. There's another really great website I like very much called myintuition.org. And there's only specific schools that are covered, but if you plug in your information there, they'll give you a readout of what you can expect in terms of aid and federal loans and what your share is likely to be, and break that down in an estimate. It does not tell you how you should cover your cost or how you might reduce your share of the cost. That's what SmartTrack is trying to provide here for you are those resources. But otherwise, you will receive your aid package offers when your child receives admission to the university. So they'll apply, they'll learn whether they got admitted, and at that time, you're likely to see their financial aid package. Once they've got all of your admissions offers, you'll see the different aid packages, and then you can start to compare and see which ones are really going to make the most sense and are the best fit for your student. I hope that helps, Lizbeth. Right, so I'm asked another question. Can you give us an example of something that would artificially inflate the EFC? Yeah, so we talked about that. So how you're saving for college, that can be something that really impacts your EFCs. There are different ways to save for college, and the different accounts are assessed differently. So that's one way. How your assets are structured, how your equity is used, how certainly your taxes, what deductions you're taking, various things. There's actually a really important tool that you will find when you log into your free SmartTrack account. One of the free tools is a 1040 tax tool, and open that up and you can compare your own tax return. And you'll see all kinds of different ways and issues of things that might be beneficial to you that you can discuss with your accountant or your SmartTrack advisor, and that can influence your EFC calculations. But as I mentioned, there are so many. I'll tell you what, one thing that I don't want to do, I don't want to give you a specific example because I used to do that. And what we found was that folks would say, hey, if that was good enough for Cindy, it's good enough for me, and I'll go and do what she did. Well, the strategy that worked for me to reduce our EFCs might actually damage your financial profile. So we're very intentional about being general. So I apologize for not being more specific about that. But when you talk to the advisor and have your personalized college funding evaluation, you'll be able to discuss with them and find out what things are potentially elevating your EFCs specifically. So I hope you'll accept that. And I apologize for being vague, but it really is intended to protect you from doing things that might actually harm you. Okay. Let me keep on reading here. Bear with me. Right, so what resources, Chan asks what resources there are to assist in analyzing your current situation and what changes you can make to adjust for more aid. Again, take advantage of the resources and the tools that SmartTrack is offering. That's the best thing I can tell you. Our tools are going to really help you analyze what your current situation is. There's a really sophisticated EFC calculator, again, on the free section of our dashboard when you create our account and log in. You can see your federal and institutional EFC calculations. And then when you talk to your advisor, have that free conversation, that evaluation, they're going to be able to help you determine whether you're in a position to make any changes that will help you increase your odds for more aid. You may or may not be in such a position, but have that conversation to learn. Okay, I have to take a quick sip here. How are we doing on time? Okay, I'll take a couple more questions and then we're going to have to wrap it up. So Deborah, I'm reading about your child who's had dreams of attending ECU. She's a good student in a nursing program, great. So, you know, Deborah, my answer to you is going to be the same to others, which is you want to make sure that you are, how do I say this? Okay. People miss out on financial aid by inches, not by miles. So even if you're in a position to qualify for significant need-based financial aid, if you make errors on those aid applications, if you have your resources structured in a way you could be $1 over and find that you don't qualify for a particular grant in your home state. Whatever it is, you want to know what's going on. So take advantage of the opportunity to talk to a professional about your particular situation and pardon me, and see if there's anything that you need to do to make sure that you qualify for the maximum amount of aid. You may already be in a really great position. There may be nothing more for you to do other than make sure your child's getting really great grades and scores, because that can help her receive more merit aid, and make sure that you submit those aid applications correctly and on time. That may be all you need to do. I hope that helps you, Deborah. Right. So Aileen asks, when's the best time to do this? Senior year or before we can start? As early as you can. Do not wait for senior year. The resources that we offer, for example, in our bundle, those premium resources, those tools, those are really applicable to be doing some research about schools that you want to apply to. That can be helpful come usually about second semester of junior year. Those can be really helpful for you. The SMART steps and the merit aid maximizing tools, you'll use those in senior year. But the college planning part, the really organizing your financial profile and determining how you're going to use your resources to cover your college costs, set yourself up for success, that needs to happen earlier, as early as you can, like 5 minutes ago. Okay, don't wait. All right. Sarah asks a question about credit and her son having co-signers on his bank card and credit card. Would it benefit him not to have a parent on his credit card and bank card? Sarah, I don't know that that's going to matter, but I don't have a good answer for that. So that's a good question for when you do have your college funding evaluation with your Smart Track advisor. They'll be in a better position to maybe answer that if that's going to be a problem. I don't think so. But don't take my word for it, because I'm not one of the college funding advisors. You won't be talking to me about your money, okay? All right, I think I mentioned this before, that in terms of when you can begin looking at private scholarships. In fact, there are a lot of scholarships that your child does not have to be a rising senior. They can start when they're freshmen, sophomores, juniors. In fact, the Smart Track $2,500 scholarship through the Society is available for 9th, 10th, 11th graders, as well as 12th graders. So different scholarships will have different parameters, but it's not too early to begin applying for and amassing some private scholarship funds. Yeah, I just want you with the private scholarships, I just want you to manage your expectations, because as a consistent method for how you're going to affordably pay for college every year your kid's in school, for all of your kids, you're putting a lot of eggs in a dodgy basket. So, hey, if you can get private scholarships, fantastic. It's icing on the cake. But it's not necessarily, for most families, not the way you're consistently going to be able to count on to cover your college costs. Right. And then Mary Ellen asks, after the stress test, will your advisors let me know if there's not anything they can do to significantly reduce our EFC? Yeah, so absolutely. So I want to make this perfectly clear that when you talk to our advisors, they're going to be upfront with you. They are going to let you know if there's anything going on that we can help you with, they're going to tell you. And if there's not, we're going to tell you that too. We will never recommend our services or our tools to someone whom we cannot significantly assist. And we can't help everyone. A lot of you are in situations that there's not a lot that needs to be done or that we can do that's going to really make a difference for you. We'd never want anyone to invest their money into our resources if it's not going to significantly pay off for you. So be aware of that. And they'll let you know. If we can help you, they're going to tell you. And if we can't, please don't be offended. It's not that we're turning you away, that we don't want to work with you. It's just that it's not worth it to you. We don't want you to invest in something that's not going to have a positive outcome for you. Okay, I hope that helps. I realize that you have a rising senior now, so you're a little late to the program. Don't delay. Every minute, every day counts. Okay. Okay. I hope that you've answered the questions in the poll, and I realize now that it's 5:23 my time, so it's really late. I've taken up so much of your time, so thank you so much. I'm sorry if I did not get to your question, but please create your account or log in if you already have one. Answer the quick assessment questions, schedule your call, get on our schedule. You will be glad you did. The level of stress that you feel about this issue will come down when you realize that you're taking steps to be in control of what's happening here. You're not just going to be passive and wait to see what happens and hope for the best. Okay. So I hope that we can be of service and that we can be of help. And if you have questions specific to your situation, by all means, pose them to your Smart Track advisor when you have your college funding stress test. Okay. All right, you guys, thank you so much. I hope this was helpful. Have a great, safe, fun summer, and best of everything to you and your families. I hope we can be of service. Be well, everyone. Good night.